had intensive work. This stuff, you know all this stuff. Would I assume that or not assume it? I don't know. I won't assume it. I'm just going to talk, I'm going to breeze lightly over this very quickly. The duty to accommodate is not only, is when you have a right to what everybody has a right to, but when it doesn't support you effectively, when a uniform standard or practice doesn't address your unique needs, then there's a duty for the system or service to be accommodated, to be adapted, so that your needs are accommodated. Like, that's human rights process and law in Canada. What does it apply to? It applies to educational services, facilities, and services, of course, are the actual instruction in the classroom. Facilities and employment. It affects the people who work there. They need to be accommodated as well. So our goal is to ensure full participation of students in all aspects of the educational experience and ensure that they meet their potential. And that's the starting point. And schools and departments of education, ministries of education, must accommodate students with disabilities to the point of undue hardship. This language that you're part of your training, and of course there's the Mioran test, and I'm not going to go into this. I'll just flash it up here to let you know I know about it. And this is a Supreme Court standard on how you measure the requirements of accommodation, and there are 3 particular tests. That the provision for difference is rationally connected to the objective of the enterprise, that you're making decisions in good faith and not biased about whole classes of people. You know, there has to be an openness to individuals. And finally, the exceptions or the policy or the standards are reasonably necessary. And that you can't provide the service with quality in the usual way without undue hardship becoming a factor. So this is a matter of law. You can Google Mioran test and get more on that. The interesting thing that I think is the whole concept of undue hardship. And this is where I think we haven't had success through human rights processes yet in getting to the limits of what the law would require if we pursue suitable cases. I mean, the law is a dangerous thing. You don't know how they're going to determine things unless you have the right case, the right arguments, and the right circumstances to establish a principle. But undue hardship is a test that the system has to meet. It's not a case of the individual child or the family having to prove that whatever accommodation they need is reasonable. The system has to show that it's not reasonable, that it comes to the point of undue hardship. And the factors that you use in determining this are certainly excessive cost. Cost us, you know, let's suppose we're an ongoing 5-day-a-week educational operation operated by the government. If there were access costs here to have Norm be able to get here, and it was going to cost us $40,000 or $50,000, and if we paid that, he would be able to get here, and so would others who might have similar needs. Is that reasonable for the province of Ontario or the province of New Brunswick to pay for that? And my answer is absolutely. If it was going to cost $1 million, maybe that's excessive. And my guess is the general public would probably think $1 million might be a little much just for Norm, unless we can rationalize that it's going to, you know, it depends on the institution. It depends on a lot of things. But there's a way for well-intentioned, fair people to reach judgments on what's reasonable. And so cost is a factor, but it's not the only factor. There's also serious risk to health safety of the child who you might be wanting to accommodate and to the other children who would be there during the accommodation. And this has to be looked at. And it can't be just a formula. You know, one of the unfortunate things, and I've worked in the special ed system, is that special ed system, the way it operates in many parts of the country, you know, you get a classification and a label, and it's just automatic that you go do a certain thing. That's not individualized. And everybody's different. Everybody has different needs to be accommodated. So truly, you can't, on the one hand, argue that kids who have individual needs need to be accommodated, and then abandon the individuality when it comes to the solutions. So they're like standard prescribed solutions if you have individual needs. Like, you got to follow through on the individuality aspect, if you know what I mean. Impact on other people and programs, and that is a factor. I mean, our Supreme Court, even our charter, it has the provision that these things make sense in a free and democratic society. You know, there is a judgment about what's reasonable. And I trust Canadians generally about what's reasonable. I don't trust officials all the time or people in the bureaucracies. But I trust ordinary people. I trust your neighbors if they have information to make decent, fair choices. And if we can't, we're in real trouble. Oh, costs of undue hardship. This is important, and you know, we really got the attention of the Ministry of Education officials in New Brunswick when we put in our guideline very clearly this statement. When it comes to accommodate an individual kid, it's not the school or the principal that makes the judgment. You know, if you take a child with great needs who needs a lot of support into an individual school and you talk about what's needed to make it work, and the principal says, well, gee, I'd like to do this, but like, this is going to take a full-time assistant, adaptations to the building, maybe environmental, physical changes to the air system, who knows, I mean, a whole bunch of things. The school principal could be over what he or she's able to do in jig time. They just don't have the budgets, the capacity to move things around and to solve individual needs and to accommodate suitably. So if we're left at what the principal could say, well, we don't have programs for a child with these kind of needs in our school, but they do over there on the other side of town. You know, there's a school that deals with kids like yours. Go there. You ever hear that? And you can't blame that principal, can you? Because you know very well that the principal doesn't have control of a budget or resources on his or her own to solve that. So then the next place you go to is the special ed director. And of course, they can go through the same routine. They have a little more flexibility, but they still have.